Good afternoon and welcome to the ISO Board of Governors General Session meeting. Please note that all audience audio connections will be muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We'll give you instructions on how to enter the queue at that time. With that, I'll turn the call over to ISO Board of Governors Chair Jan Shorey. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the March 20th meeting. Looks like we have a short but important meeting today with several interesting items. So we want to get going. I will go ahead and turn it over to our General Counsel to do the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Shorey. We'll start with you. Chair Shorey.
Oh, here.
Vice Chair Borenstein.
Here.
Governor Edo.
Here.
Governor Galitova. Someone has to be. Governor Leslie.
I'll be present also.
Excellent. We have a full complement of governors that are here and present and ready for action. We may proceed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And I think our next item is to consider approving the February 7th, 2024 General Session minutes. So again, I will turn it over to our General Counsel.
Thanc you, Chair Shorey, but you jumped a little bit ahead. We do have our standing item for general public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm here for you. And so Tegan, if you can check on the phone and see if there is anybody that would like to make a public comment for items not on the agenda. And if there's anyone in the room, we have public comment cards that I don't see any that have been filled out. So I think we do not have any public comment from the room. But if you can check the Zoom.
Absolutely. If you would like to make a public comment at this time, use the raise hand feature in Zoom to virtually raise your hand. You'll see a pop-up when it is your turn to speak. Please acknowledge that pop-up so you can be unmuted. At that point, please state your name and the company you represent before making your comment. If you have joined us via audio only, you can dial #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the queue. I am not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Roger then, and now we'll do the minutes.
Thank you, Chair Shorey. We satisfied our open meeting requirements.
Yep.
And so next on the agenda, we have our February 7th, 2024 Board of Governors General Session minutes. And can I have a motion to approve those, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, governors. The motion passes. Back to you, Chair Shorey.
Yes, thank you. At this point on our agenda, it's time for our CEO report. Elliot.
Thank you, Chair Shorey, Vice Chair Borenstein, and ISO governing board members. It's great to see all of you. This week, the theme has been fabulous, beautiful spring weather, cherry blossoms, warming temperatures, and just some great time together. Really appreciate it. Of course, as we've now starting to get into spring and already starting to turn our attention to summer and summer readiness, never too far away from our focus. We've already begun working on our tabletop exercises, our internal coordination, starting to take a look at resource adequacy showings and just making sure that the fleet's going to be as solid as possible. Of course, we're feeling pretty good about where conditions stand as of today. You know, nice hydro conditions. Of course, we know we're now over 8,000 megawatts of batteries on the grid, certainly helping out with our net peak dispatch, but ever vigilant, lots of work to do here across the spring going into the summer. We will be holding our Summer Readiness Leadership Roundtable again this year on May 14th, where we'll have a chance to hear from all the different balancing authorities across the West on the different sub-regional conditions and just try to ensure max coordination. So just wanted to make sure you know that we're already into that mode, planning for summer. Of course, we're all just turning the page on, I think, a very robust round of discussions about winter conditions this year. As you know, back on March 6th, our Market Performance and Advanced Analytics Group released their winter conditions report with special emphasis on the cold snap that hit the Northwest and the Intermountain West over the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday period. And it was a very disruptive weekend. And then, of course, on March 11th, we also held a public meeting to discuss those findings. I think both of these, the release of the report, the March 11th meeting, some other discussions with folks up in the Northwest, just a great opportunity, I think, to sort of really establish, from our perspective, the core fact pattern that emerged from those events, and also to really sort of reiterate the value of the energy imbalance market in economically dispatching generation to support regions experiencing stress grid conditions, as well as providing access to assistance energy transfers to entities who were unable to meet their short-term sufficiency requirements. Both of those, I think, were key parts of the reliability solution during that weekend. It was also a chance for our team to review how the congestion management mechanisms work in our market, and to just emphasize opportunities for additional coordination and co-optimization with Northwest transmission providers through expansion of our day-ahead market. So thanks to the team that spent a lot of time socializing those findings. We will be posting a fact sheet with key statistics and sort of takeaways from that winter report and subsequent discussions on our website here in the near future, just to make sure we keep that as fact-based as possible. As we turn to the extended day-ahead market, just a ton of progress to report. Again, thanks to just so many folks that continue to lean in, help us move the ball. Of course, last month was a wonderful milestone when the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power Oversight Board voted to authorize LADWP to begin preparations to join the extended day-ahead market. This is really, our partnership with LADWP is something that has just, I think, really flourished and blossomed in recent years, and just an entity that can bring over 3,600 miles of transmission and a very diverse portfolio of power resources to the market. It's clearly going to broaden out both the breadth and the depth of EDM, and just excited for the next steps with LA. Back on February 16th, we submitted our compliance filing with FERC for EDAM and our day-ahead market enhancements initiatives. So those have been processed. We're also working very actively here this week with stakeholders on our FERC filing on the transmission revenue recovery, which we also refer to as the EDAM access charge. And we're hoping, we plan to have that filing submitted with the commission before the end of the month. So that's going very well. And of course, I think everybody knows we did receive good news earlier this month when FERC approved a number of our proposals that enable the ISO Balancing Authority to participate in EDAM consistent with its approved design elements. I wanted to just to turn for a few moments on the issue of the transmission service and market scheduling priorities, our wheel-through proposals and policies. We did post available transmission capacity numbers in February for advanced reservations. I think that went very well. We also ran our second request window in February for those seeking to establish wheeling through priority for June 2024 and beyond. We are continuing at this point with manual implementation in March. We'll be publishing ATC numbers and opening up a request submission window until new functionality becomes available in April to automate the process. But this, getting that inventory into folks' hands and keeping that moving is obviously very important for many of our partners, and we continue to stand by that process and just honoring those wheel-through obligations. So appreciate the whole team for keeping that moving. Of course, just turning briefly to transmission, I think, Board, I think you're aware that we will be bringing back to you in May a package of transformational reforms for our interconnection queuing processes as part of our overarching, long-term transmission planning and interconnection and procurement and subscription practices. Really excited about this initiative. The thing I wanted to call to your attention today, outside of just the excellent content and policy work that's going on, this has been, I think, an outstanding example of the CAISO really embracing the working group model for stakeholder engagement. We've had tremendous engagement in that process just from the very outset, working with our stakeholders to define the principles and kind of the core objectives of the interconnection process reform. Great rounds of feedback. And I'm really excited to be bringing back to you what I think are going to be a package of really important reforms. We know how important it is for the CAISO to be able to onboard all the necessary resources, over 7,000 megawatts a year to stay on track with SB 100. And we know we have many, many people in the utility, load serving entity, and commercial development space who are dependent on that process. And of course, the partnership with the regulatory agencies, the utilities, and the development community to make sure that power and transmission planning, interconnection queuing, and subscription are all synchronized. That's our core, our core thesis, and we're going to continue to operate from that. So really excited about the next steps in the IPE reform proposal. Just finally wanted to note that the 2024 Stakeholder Symposium is now scheduled for October 30th at the Safe Credit Union Convention Center in downtown Sacramento, and we're going to be having a welcome reception the night before. We're going to do a one-day event this year. Yeah, we're going to, yeah, I imagine we'll probably have a few people show up in costumes. Yeah, I mean, between Joanne and Stacy, they'll probably arrange for something fun for the stakeholder symposium. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be a fabulous event. I'm really looking forward to it. I think we're going to have a chance again to really sort of take stock of some of the really important current topics around market expansion, transmission development, our evolving model for stakeholder engagement, and some of the new technologies that are emerging and starting to come into the conventional time horizon. So please save the date for the stakeholder symposium, and more details about registration participation will be available soon. So that concludes my CEO report. Again, just super grateful at the moment for all the work that's going on, both inside and outside the CAISO, just to kind of keep the West moving together, and just to all the folks who are leaning in on so many different directions. Just thanks on behalf of all of us at the CAISO. So happy to take any questions and turn it back to you, Chair Shore. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for our CEO?
Yeah, I had two questions, actually. One, we're moving fast, but how much battery did you say was on?
We're over 8,000 megawatts now. The
8,000,
last
okay.
official number I
heard
saw
it
was
much
at
bigger.
8,100, and we still had some in ComMox. And I think we're planning on likely having another couple thousand on board before the summer. So it is just continues to be just a really rapid pace of development.
That's great.
Yeah.
And my other question was actually possibly for Mark as well. I every morning open the CAISO website and look at the peak loads, and they have been just 25,000
pinned. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that normal for this time of year? It seems low, but
Mark, you want to take that? Pretty normal.
This is the low point of the load season, but I hesitate to get too excited about that because it's also outage season. So the supply picture is also not as robust because people are taking maintenance outages and stuff.
And that's fine. I just wondered if we were seeing any trend in load side.
No, this is the time where it bottoms out.
Okay.
Yep.
We
So
have
that's
had
about normal for this time of year.
There has been a lot of chatter out there about the solar fleet continues to grow, so the belly of the duck curve continues to get lower and lower. We've had a number of days operating the grid, with significant load displacement. So yeah.
Yeah, the EIA website was reporting the wholesale price of electricity for yesterday was negative.
Yeah.
For the day.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I better go buy some of that.
Stock up before summer. Yeah. Great.
Any other questions for Elliot? No?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We're up to agenda item number 4, our WEIM Governing Body Chair Report. Andy Campbell's here with us today.
Okay, thank you, Chair Shorey, Vice Chair Bornstein, and governors. Thank you for inviting me to share updates on the Western EIM governing body's 2 most recent general session meetings. So last year, a new process was put in place for the governing body to develop and share advisory opinions with the ISO Board of Governors. If we have an advisory authority on a matter, we hold a meeting 2 weeks prior to the Board of Governors meeting where that item will be considered. This allows time for the Board of Governors to consider that input in the board's deliberations. And so on March 7th, we held our first such meeting, which was looking at implementation of governance changes. And I'll speak to the substance of that later on the agenda. And then yesterday, we held our regular general session meeting. Haley Williamson, chair of the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada and chair of the Body of State Regulators, reported on their recent activities. This included consensus comments they developed on the policy roadmap priorities and submitted to the ISO. It's always a big lift for the BOSSer to come up with consensus comments, given the diversity of perspectives there, but they have very substantive input. The new Regional Issues Forum chair, Meg McNall, who represents the 6 cities, she provided an update at our meeting. She spoke in particular about the March 18th, so this past Monday, meeting that the Regional Issues Forum held in this room, and Chair Shorey as well as Governor Edo were both able to attend that. Focus of that meeting was implementing some governance review committee recommendations around organizing a roundtable and really coordinating a lot of stakeholder input into the policy roadmap process. It seemed like a very effective process. There was a lot of behind the scenes, different sector leads working with their sector members, consolidating, looking for common themes, reporting those out. And from that, there's common themes that emerged across some of the sectors. So the Regional Issues Forum will be preparing a written report, and that will be presented to the governing body, but then it'll be a piece of input that the ISO staff will have in the roadmap process. We also heard about the Regional Issues Forum's panel they held during that same meeting on energy storage, which was very educational. And then at our meeting, the governing body market expert, Dr. Susan Pope, delivered an educational briefing on fast start pricing, which is a particular issue that's received a lot of attention in the Price Formation Enhancements Initiative. I recommend looking at the materials she's prepared, which are on our website. And then finally, Becky Robinson, Director of Market Policy Development, provided an update on policy initiatives. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Andy. And I'll just add my 2 cents worth having attended the Regional Issues Forum. First, I was very impressed with the quality and substance of the recommendations and the really hard work that has gone into trying to get those into a formal presentation so that we can all look at them and think about them and potentially incorporate some of those thoughts into our business planning activities. So I also was very interested in the battery discussion. The experts that all spoke and provided a number of different perspectives on where we're going with batteries and storage. And so I wanted to extend my thanks to all of the people that are volunteering their time to help us work through these issues, because it's really important. And in some ways, you see this kind of board meeting, there's a few people here around the table and we're trying to move things forward, but it continues to remind me how many people are out there that are really experts that are trying to think through the best path forward to help us accomplish our goals. I don't know, Joe, if you wanted to add any 2 cents worth of yours after
Yes, I would
going
like
to
to
that.
add my thanks to all the sector participants and especially the sector liaisons. I mean, there's a lot of work to collect to reach out and bring in that diverse set of comments and organize them in a way that the ISO can begin working on those issues. I think it's a terrific way to bring in that stakeholder input, and I would like to see the sector grow in the participation in that process. I think it's a really, really important way for us to understand the priorities of the stakeholders. And we've got a lot of work to do, and we need to get as much input as possible to get the priorities right.
The other thing I will say, having sat through it, it's very clear that not all the stakeholders themselves were on the same page. And this forum is providing a very useful way for them to talk to each other and not just to the ISO. So I thought that is a very valuable outcome.
It's a good step forward. I'd like to see it continue. It's
from
very
that.
robust
Anyway,
process.
so thank you to all the people that participated in getting that pulled together. I know it's a lot of work, but I think it's going to be very valuable for us going forward. So any other comments, any questions for Andy on his report? No? Okay. Thank you, Andy. We will move on then to agenda item 5, which is our decision on implementing EDAM governance. So I'll turn it back to Roger.
Thank you, Chair Shorey. I'm happy to introduce Dan Schonkweiler, who's our Assistant General Counsel for Corporate and Litigation, who has worked tirelessly and brilliantly over many, many years at the California ISO, but in particular over the last couple of years on the Governance Review Committee's efforts to develop an EDAM governance model. And what we have today is really the implementation of that. About a year ago, the board and the governing body jointly approved the GRC proposal. And as Dan will explain, each of the governance documents that get affected have their own kind of implementation requirements, and that is what we're doing here today. So without any more, I'll turn it over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Roger. This is, I think, the third time the board has been through this cycle of approving governance changes from the GRC and then later implementing them. And this phase 3 of the GRC is a little different in 2 ways. First, the changes are narrower. Phase 1 and phase 2 of the GRC's work addressed a broad range of governance improvements, from the changeover to these joint authority meetings, to joint appointments to the Market Surveillance Committee, to adding a market expert to the governing body, a lot of things. Phase 3, what was left for that were just the additional changes that were needed for EDAM. And that's the second difference, because EDAM wasn't happening right away. Phase 3, the proposal you approved, had a delayed implementation trigger. It said that these changes won't be approved now, but they will be approved after FERC conclusively accepts the EDAM tariff. Well, that's happened, and that's why we're here with implementation now. So there are These 4 governing documents are what's going to be amended: the Charter for EIM Governance, the bylaws, the guidance document, and the selection policy for the EIM governing body. Each of these documents requires board approval for substantive amendments. As Chair Campbell mentioned, the EIM governing body has provided advisory input on this. They support the changes, and I think he'll elaborate on that later. The changes fall in 4 general categories, and then they get mixed and matched in the documents. The main change is to take the delegation of authority in the joint authority construct and tailor it to EDAM, because EDAM involves a day-ahead market. The day-ahead is not mentioned in the existing governing documents, so that's added. And there are 2 additional, in addition, there are 2 additional procedural steps in the event the EIM governing body advises against the board approving a proposal. The advice would have to be discussed in general session, and in the event that the board were to go ahead and approve that, the governing body would have assistance, the right to assistance in providing written advice that would go in with the tariff amendment to FERC. There's also a legal clarification. Some stakeholders in EDAM, EIM areas were concerned that California law requires the ISO to advance the interests of California load at the expense of all other stakeholders. And to show that that was wrong, there is a new bylaw provision clarifying the legal obligation of the ISO to weigh the interests of all stakeholders throughout the footprint, and it clarifies and defines what that is. There are also additional steps for stakeholder engagement through the Regional Issues Forum, including the new roundtable discussion of discretionary initiatives and how to prioritize them. And then finally, there's an additional procedural step when a member of the EIM governing body seeks reappointment. There wasn't a lot of discretion in preparing the red lines in these. The GRC was down to narrow issues, and as far as the key changes, the key language to these documents, they wrote it word for word, and we've largely put that in. There are a few additional non-substantive changes, such as reflecting the rebranding as WEIM and getting that into the documents and adding a little bit of additional context for EDAM. But otherwise, the changes essentially are taken from the documents, from the approved proposal. In terms of how these go into the documents and what you see in the red lines, they get mixed and matched in the following ways. The big document is the Charter for EIM Governance. That includes the tailored joint authority and the advisory role extended to the day-ahead market, the new procedural steps to be followed when the EIM governing body advises against a proposal, the new RIF roundtable discussion about prioritizing discretionary initiatives, and also adding a sector for EDAM entities. And that's in the charter. Let's go ahead. I think the bylaws are next. The bylaws include the expanded advisory role for the EIM governing body to include proposed rule changes about the day-ahead market, and also the new bylaw provision that clarifies the ISO's legal obligations. Next document, is the guidance document. That's the direction to staff about how to handle the process. That includes the revised descriptions of joint authority and the advisory role of the EIM governing body. It also includes some supplemental background to note how the history, how the original delegation of authority is being expanded under EDAM. And finally, the selection policy for the EIM governing body includes that new additional step when a sitting member of the governing body seeks reappointment. Now, a word, before I wrap this up, there'll be a nuance. Go ahead. Oh, that slide was the right one. There's a nuance to when Roger gets to the motion language, and it's this. While all these documents require board approval for substantive changes, the Charter for EIM Governance said that a narrow set of changes, those about the Regional Issues Forum and the body of state regulators, if the governing body advises in favor of those changes, they would go, at least in the first instance, on the board's consent agenda. And so that one narrow change is on your consent agenda. All the remaining changes are before you on the merits. But this is pending any questions. Management recommends that the board approve both the consent agenda and the remainder of all these changes to implement the approved EDAM governance proposal.
Thank you, Dan. I think I'll ask the board members to hold questions and comments until after we hear our governing body chair recommendation, the advisory opinion, because I know you've spent some time on this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Shorey and governors. So thank you for inviting me to share the governing body's advisory opinion, and the written opinion was provided in advance. It's in the board materials. So as I mentioned before, on March 7th, we held a general session meeting to consider providing an advisory opinion to the board on these amendments to governance documents. The EIM governing body voted unanimously to provide written advisory input supporting the proposed revisions. The EIM governing body reviewed revisions to 4 governance documents that were prepared by ISO management. We received a presentation from Dan Schonkweiler and invited public comment. No public comment was received. The governing body agrees that the proposed revisions accurately implement the proposal of the Governance Review Committee that the governing body and board jointly approved on February 1st, 2023. As such, the governing body unanimously advises that the board expeditiously approve the revisions to the governance documents discussed in and attached to the memorandum that was prepared by Roger Collington and presented to us. That was dated February 29th, 2024. Members also each reflected individually on the significance of the changes. Strength of the Western energy market has been that governance has evolved as participation in the market has expanded, and now as a new market moves toward startup. Members particularly shared their appreciation for the hard work of the Governance Review Committee and the stakeholders that engaged in that process. Members also shared their deep appreciation for Dan Schonkweiler and Berg Gross on the ISO legal team, who worked very closely with the Governance Review Committee and helped to codify the GRC's policy. A member also pointed out that the Western EIM governing body will need a new name soon. So thank you for inviting me to share the EIM governing body's advisory opinion at today's meeting.
Thank you very much. And we do have a copy of the written memorandum from the governing body in our board package recommending approval of these items. So at this point, it's appropriate to ask if there are any questions or comments from any of the board members on this item.
I just wanted to congratulate one more time. Roger, your whole team, Bert and Dan have been wonderful. The GRC process was a long process. Many of us participated on it, but I think the results speak for themselves. And I'm very glad to support this item today and appreciate the unanimous recommendation of the governing body, which will soon have a new name. And I also noted that your report, Roger, was written on February 29th. Very nice touch. 2024, good date. Every 4 years, yes. So yes, I think we have to acknowledge that this process was a long process. It took a long time. Many people participated. Stacy as well. Thank you, Stacy, for shepherding everyone along. And well, let's take a moment to remember Therese Hampton. We did lose one of our own during this process. It still breaks my heart. And I'm sure that wherever she is, she's smiling today because she's happy and gratified to see where we are. So yes, let's move forward and let's continue the great work all of us here are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. Any other board members have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I just want to echo that also, that I think this has been 5 years in coming, something like that, and that the appropriateness of the new WEIM or whatever the new name will be, having the first shot at making these decisions to support the regional governance, I think is terrific. And at the same time, I think you struck a good balance because I think that it's still going to be incumbent upon this board to actually review what is on the consent calendar, correct? And that, there's a whole method of mediation if there isn't agreement. Now, we've never not had agreement, so no one anticipates that. But I think it's important to have a balance and a counterbalance when this is done, so everybody's comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions or comments? Okay, at this point, Roger, does the operator help us with public comments?
Yes.
Okay, so let's open it up for public comments if anyone would like to offer any or questions.
If you would like to ask a question or make a public comment at this time, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. You'll see a pop-up when it is your turn to be unmuted, at which point please accept that pop-up and then say your name and the company you represent. If you are joining us via audio only, you may dial #2 to enter the queue. I'm not showing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much for your help. With that, I think we're ready for a motion, so I'll turn it back to Roger.
We are. Thank you, Chair Shori. And as Dan, first of all, thank you, Dan, for your excellent work and your excellent job today. And as Dan mentioned, the motion is, it's really two motions, but for expediency, we've put it in one. And given, the comments, I think that makes sense today. So we'll start with the first, and then we'll go through and I'll take a total vote, a combined vote. Move that the Board of Governors approves the March 20, 2024 consent agenda comprised of the changes to Section 7 of the Charter for EIM governance regarding stakeholder engagement through the Regional Issue Forum, and move that the Board of Governors approves the remainder of the proposed amendments to the Charter for EIM governance and the proposed amendments to the corporate bylaws, the selection policy for the WEIM governing body, and guidance for handling policy initiatives that may come before the WEIM governing body, as discussed in and attached to the memorandum dated March 13, 2024. And can I have a motion, please? Thank you, Angelina. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you, Governors. The motion passes.
Excellent. Congratulations. My goodness, it's been a long time coming, but we're here. We'll keep going forward. And again, thanks to all of the members of the GRC and all of the staff that worked so hard to get us to this point. Okay. Well, we are up to Ryan. We are going to talk about how we pay for everything. We're up to agenda item 6, decision on funding requests for DAME and EDAM projects. I love the acronyms in this organization. You got to keep up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Governor. So no presentation today, just a quick discussion, but I'm here today to ask for your approval on additional project funding for 2024. Those funds will be used to pay for the DAME and EDAM project that is underway currently, and probably will be completed sometime next year. Why we're here today is so every year in December, when the board has their general session to approve the revenue requirement, at that time you're approving an operating expense budget as well as a project funding budget that is used for capital projects. This year, that budget was set at $25 million, which is typical. We tend to spend 20 to 25 million a year on capital related projects. However, in the past, when we've had a large project, a significantly large project, we've decided to pull that out of the annual program and treat it as a standalone project. Because if we put through a large project in the annual amount, it would be too detrimental to the other projects. So this qualifies. This is a $15.2 million combined project. This is how we've treated in the past. We treated the Lincoln Operations Center building this way. We treated the EMS upgrade as well as the settlement system upgrade. It was 2 years ago, I think was the latest one that we pulled out as a standalone project. So this is very similar. Today's, for your approval, will increase our $25 million project funding balance by this $15.2 million for this purpose. Later today in an executive session, you'll be asked to approve specific vendor contracts around this project. And I will leave you on this note, is that this doesn't impact the revenue requirement this year. It doesn't change our rates or anything this year. This comes out of the capital reserve balances that are on the ISO's balance sheet. So any questions?
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any questions from any of the board members on this item? All right. With that, then I guess we're ready for the motion. Roger. Oh, excuse me. Again, forgive me. This is my first time doing this, and so I need to practice. Public comment, important to request public comment. So operator, could you check for us? Thank you.
I am not seeing any virtual hands raised at this time.
Great. Didn't cut anybody off this time. Thanks.
Okay, now we are ready for the
Now we're
motion.
ready. Yeah.
That's okay. It gives me something to do. All right. So move that the ISO Board of Governors approves the capital project budget of 15.2 million for the ISO day-ahead market enhancements and the extended day-ahead market projects as described in the memorandum dated March 13, 2024. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Governors. The motion passes.
Well, this was a pretty speedy meeting. The only item remaining is that we do have a number of our usual informational reports. Do any board members have any questions or comments on any of the informational reports that are included as part of the agenda package? Okay, seeing none, thank you all for participating in today's meeting, and we'll see you all again soon. With that, we're adjourned.